Picture this, it's the year 1350 and your parents have just informed you that you're marrying someone named Egbert who smells like sheep and owns half a swamp. No, you don't get a say and no love isn't part of the equation. Fast forward to 2025 and you're swiping through a dating app hoping the next profile isn't another shirtless gym selfie with a bio that just says vibes. Arranged marriages versus dating apps, two wildly different ways humans have tried to find the one. Or at least someone who won't drive them up the wall. In this video, we're diving into the chaotic, hilarious, and sometimes surprisingly similar worlds of medieval arranged marriages and modern algorithm-driven dating. Buckle up because we're about to explore how our ancestors navigated the marriage market and what it tells us about our swipe right culture today. Let's start with the medieval scene. Back then, marriage wasn't about candlelit dinners or finding your soulmate, it was a business deal, pure and simple. Imagine your parents sitting down with a local lord haggling over your future like they're bartering for a prized cow. 2 acres of land and a mule for your daughter's hand deal. Love, that was a luxury like indoor plumbing or not dying of dysentery. Marriages were about alliances consolidating power or securing enough farmland to keep your family from starving through another brutal winter. Your spouse was chosen based on how many goats they could bring to the table, not whether they made your heart flutter. Take Eleanor of Aquitaine, for example. In 1137, at the ripe age of 15, she was married off to Louis VII of France. This wasn't because they shared a passion for poetry or long walks in the countryside. It was because her massive inheritance made her the ultimate medieval PowerPoint presentation. Her marriage tied her family's lands to the French crown, and love was just a footnote if it was mentioned at all. Spoiler alert, the marriage didn't last, and Eleanor went on to marry Henry II of England, proving that even in the Middle Ages, you could trade up if the deal went sour. But the point is, your parents or maybe a nosy uncle were the ones calling the shots. Your job was to show up, say I do, and hope your new spouse didn't snore like a warthog. Now let's contrast that with today's dating apps. You're in control, right? You've got a buffet of potential partners at your fingertips, curated by algorithms that know you better than your own mom. Or so they claim. You plug in your preferences' height hobbies, whether they're team dog or team cat, and the app spits out a list of matches. It's like Amazon, but for humans. People who like this profile also swiped right on Chad27, who loves craft beer and existential dread. But let's be real, those algorithms aren't exactly Cupid. They're crunching data based on your past swipes, not your deepest desires. And yet, just like medieval parents, they're steering you towards someone they think is a good match. Here's where it gets funny, whether it's your parents or an algorithm, someone else is still playing matchmaker. In the Middle Ages, your mom might have whispered, he's got a nice plot of land, while today your app is like he's got a 7-star rating and doesn't mention crypto in his bio. Different eras, same vibe, someone's trying to sell you on a partner you didn't choose yourself, and the awkwardness, oh, it's universal. Imagine sitting across from your betrothed at a medieval banquet, trying to make small talk about crop yields while dodging their questionable hygiene. Now picture a modern first date where you're both pretending you didn't Google each other beforehand, and he's explaining why NFTs are the future. Same energy, just swap the plague for bad Wi-Fi. So why did arranged marriages work back then? Well, work is a generous term. They worked because expectations were low. You weren't looking for your soulmate, you were looking for someone who wouldn't accidentally burn down the village. Marriage was a team effort to survive, raise kids, and keep the family name going. If you ended up liking each other, that was a bonus, like finding an extra turnip in your stew. And divorce, good luck. Unless you were royalty with a pope in your pocket, you were stuck. Compare that to today, where we're swiping for the one but ghosting after 3 texts because they used the wrong your. Our standards are higher, but our patience, not so much. Here's a thought to chew on. Were our medieval ancestors onto something by keeping love out of the equation? They didn't expect their spouse to be their best friend, therapist, and personal chef all rolled into one. Maybe that's why we're so stressed on dating apps. We're chasing a fairy tale that even Disney couldn't dream up. Back then, you just had to coexist and not poison each other's mead. Today we're analyzing every emoji for hidden meaning, so what can we learn from this? Maybe it's about finding a balance, valuing personal choice, but not overthinking every swipe or date. After all, whether it's a matchmaker or a match algorithm, the goal is the same, finding someone you can stand to share your life with, or at least a Netflix password. As we move forward, let's dig deeper into the nitty-gritty of how these medieval marriages went down, who was making the calls, and what happened when things didn't go as planned. And how do those old school deal breakers stack up against the red flags we obsess over on dating apps today? Stick around because this journey through love's past and present is about to get even wilder. So we've established that medieval arranged marriages were less about hard eyes and more about who could bring the most cows to the altar. Meanwhile, today's dating apps promise you a soulmate, but often deliver a guy who thinks deep conversation means debating pizza toppings. Let's dive deeper into how these medieval matchups actually played out and see how they stack up against the modern swipe fest. Spoiler, both systems had their fair share of chaos, charm, and moments that make you wonder how humanity survived at all. Picture a medieval village circa 1400. You're a peasant girl named Agnes, and your parents have decided you're marrying Baldwin the blacksmith's son. Why? Because his dad's forge is the only one in town and your family needs free horseshoes for life. The decision wasn't made over a cozy family dinner. It was probably sealed in a smoky tavern over a pint of questionable ale. Your parents may be a local priest, and Baldwin's dad haggled over the dowry, a few chickens, a sack of grain, and your least favorite goat. You might have met Baldwin once when he accidentally set your skirt on fire while showing off his hammer skills. Romantic, right? This was the reality for most people. Marriage was a contract and you were the fine print. But it wasn't just peasants getting hitched this way. Nobles took arranged marriages to a whole new level. Think of it as medieval geopolitics with wedding bells. Take Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon in 1469. Their marriage wasn't just a union of two people, it was a merger that created Spain as we know it. Their parents didn't care if they vibed, they cared about uniting kingdoms to fend off rivals and fund some serious empire building. Love was optional, but power was non-negotiable. These high-stakes marriages came with elaborate ceremonies, but the real work happened behind closed doors, where families negotiated land titles and military alliances like they were playing a very intense game of Risk. Now let's talk about what happened when these arranged marriages went wrong, because surprise they often did. Imagine you're married to someone who chews with their mouth open, smells like a stable, and thinks personal space is a myth. In the Middle Ages, you couldn't just pack your bags and leave. Divorce was a nightmare unless you had serious clout, like say a king who could bribe the Pope. For most people, you were stuck, so you made it work. Some couples found a rhythm, even grew fond of each other over time. Others, well, let's just say medieval poetry is full of not-so-subtle hints about unhappy wives and wandering husbands. And if your spouse was a total disaster, you might pray for a convenient plague to sort things out. Harsh, but survival was the name of the game. Fast forward to today, and let's look at the chaos of dating apps. You've got Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, all promising to find your perfect match with a few taps. But instead of parents or priests, you've got algorithms playing Cupid. These apps analyze your swipes likes, and that one time you accidentally matched with someone whose bio was just a string of eggplant emojis. The goal? To pair you with someone who fits your type. But here's the catch, just like medieval parents, these algorithms don't really know you. They're guessing based on data, not your dreams of finding someone who'll binge watch sci-fi with you or laugh at your terrible puns. And let's not forget the glitches ever been matched with someone who lives 3,000 miles away because the app thought nearby was a suggestion. The parallels are uncanny. In the Middle Ages, your parents might have ignored your protest because he's got land. Today, your app ignores your filters because he's got a high match score. Both systems prioritize practicalities over passion. Back then it was about survival, land status, or enough sheep to last the winter. Now it's about compatibility scores, shared interests, or whether they're active within 24 hours. But the awkward first encounter is timeless. A medieval bride might have been sizing up her groom's ability to fend off wolves while dodging his garlic breath. Today you're sizing up your date's ability to hold a conversation while wondering if their profile pic is from 2015. The stakes have changed, but the cringe is eternal. Here's where it gets interesting. Both systems reveal how humans have always tried to control the chaos of love. Medieval arranged marriages were about minimizing risk pairing people who could keep the family afloat. Dating apps do the same, just with fancier tech. But they're designed to reduce the randomness of meeting someone in a bar or, heaven forbid, real life. But both approaches can backfire spectacularly. In the Middle Ages, you might end up with a spouse who hated you as much as you hated them. Today, you might spend weeks texting someone only to realize on the first date that their great personality is just them quoting The Office nonstop. At least our ancestors didn't have to deal with ghosting, though getting ditched via carrier pigeon would have been hilarious. So what made arranged marriages stick even when they started rocky? Community pressure played a huge role. Your village, your church, your entire family were invested in you staying married. If you bailed, you weren't just breaking a vow, you were tanking the family business. Compare that to today, where you can unmatch someone faster than you can say red flag. Dating apps give you freedom, but they also make it easy to ditch a connection the second it gets tough. Maybe that's why modern relationships feel so fragile. We've got endless options, but zero obligation. Our ancestors didn't have a choice, so they had to figure out how to make it work. Maybe there's a lesson there. Commitment isn't just about feelings. It's about choosing to stick it out even when your spouse's idea of romance is gifting you a slightly less moldy potato. What's wild is how both systems shaped our expectations. Medieval folks didn't expect fireworks, they wanted a partner who could chop wood or bear heirs. Today we're chasing chemistry compatibility and someone who doesn't text K in response to a paragraph. But are we overcomplicating things? Maybe the medieval mindset of just make it work could save us from overanalyzing every date. Next up, we'll explore how these systems, old and new, deal with the fallout of bad matches and what happens when you're stuck with someone who's just not your vibe. Are we really as free as we think, or are we just trading one matchmaker for another? Let's find out. Alright, we've laughed about medieval parents bartering their kids for goats, and modern algorithms serving up matches who think you up is a personality trait. But what happens when the match, whether it's arranged by your village elder or a swipe-happy app, goes south? Let's dig into the messy aftermath of medieval arranged marriages and today's dating app fumbles, and see what they reveal about our endless quest for connection. Spoiler, whether it's 1425 or 2025, bad matches are a universal headache, and figuring out how to deal with them tells us a lot about what we value in relationships. Let's hop back to the Middle Ages, where you're now married to Baldwin the blacksmith, whose idea of a romantic evening is sharpening his tools while you churn butter in silence. Things aren't clicking, and not just because his beard smells like yesterday's stew. In those days, walking away from a marriage was like trying to escape a castle siege, possible for the rich and powerful, but a nightmare for everyone else. The church had marriage on lockdown, and divorce was less common than a sunny day in England. If you were a peasant, you gritted your teeth and made it work, because splitting up meant social exile, financial ruin, or a one-way ticket to the village gossip mill. Nobles had a bit more wiggle room, think Henry VIII, who basically turned "I'm done with this marriage" into a national sport, but even they needed serious political or religious muscle to pull it off. What's fascinating is how people coped with bad matches without the option to bail. Some found ways to coexist like silent roommates who occasionally produced heirs. Others got creative. Medieval literature is full of stories about unhappy spouses finding a courtly love on the side. Think knights serenading married ladies with lute solos and questionable poetry. It wasn't exactly ethical, but it was a pressure valve for marriages that felt like a life sentence. And if things got really bad, well, accidents happened. A suspicious fall down the castle stairs, a dodgy batch of mead. Let's just say medieval problem solving could get dark, but for most, the key was low expectations. You didn't need to love your spouse, you just needed to survive them. If you ended up friends, that was a win, like finding a chicken that laid 2 eggs in one day. Now let's swipe back to today. You've been texting Alex from Hinge for weeks, charmed by their witty banter and carefully curated profile pics. Then you meet and it's a disaster. They're late, they interrupt you to argue about pineapple on pizza, and their charming laugh sounds like a hyena with a head cold. Unlike medieval Agnes, you've got options. Ghost them, block them, swipe on to the next match before your coffee's even cold. Dating apps give you the freedom to ditch a bad vibe faster than you can say unmatch. But here's the flip side, that freedom makes us picky to a fault. One bad date, one weird text, and we're out convinced the next swipe will be the one. It's like we're shopping for a partner with the same impatience we use to skip ads on YouTube. This ease of moving on has its perks, but it's also a trap. In the Middle Ages, you were stuck, so you had to figure out how to communicate compromise, or at least not murder each other over who left the privy seat up. Today, we've got no such pressure. Don't like their vibe, swipe left. They chew too loudly, unmatch. It's liberating, but it also means we're less likely to work through rough patches. Studies show modern daters are more likely to bail at the first sign of trouble. 40% of couples on dating apps never make it past the first date, according to some surveys. Compare that to our ancestors who had to make it work because their survival and their family's goats depended on it. Maybe they were onto something with their just deal with it mentality. Here's where the two worlds collide. Both systems expose how we handle conflict in relationships. Medieval couples had to master the art of negotiation, whether it was dividing chores or convincing your spouse not to trade you for a better dowry. Today we're negotiating too, but it's different. We're haggling over who texts first, whether they're too clingy, or if they're worth a second date after mentioning they collect vintage spoons. Dating apps make it easy to walk away, but they also make us lazy communicators. Why bother talking through a disagreement when you can just swipe for someone new? Our ancestors didn't have that luxury, so they got good at the messy human work of building a life together, even when it wasn't perfect. But let's not romanticize the past too much. Arranged marriages often trapped people, especially women, in miserable or even abusive situations with no escape. Dating apps, for all their flaws, give us agency. You can choose who to talk to, who to meet, and when to call it quits. That's huge. The catch, with all that choice, we're drowning in options. Psychologists call it the paradox of choice. Too many possibilities make us anxious and less satisfied with what we pick. Back then you had one shot at a match, so you made it work. Now we've got a buffet of profiles, and we're still stressing about whether there's a better option 3 swipes away. So what can we take from this? Maybe it's about valuing personal choice, but not letting it paralyze us. Medieval couples teach us that relationships take work, communication, patience, and a willingness to stick it out when things aren't Instagram perfect. Dating apps remind us we don't have to settle for someone who smells like sheep or sends unsolicited gym selfies. The trick is finding the middle ground, choosing who you want to be with, but also choosing to put in the effort when the spark isn't instant. After all, even the best algorithms can't predict chemistry, and no dowry can guarantee love. As we head toward the end of this wild ride, let's wrap up by looking at what these two worlds, medieval marriages and modern apps, teach us about finding the one. Are we really that different from our ancestors, or are we just chasing the same dreams with fancier tools? And what's the one thing we can learn from both to make our relationships less like a battlefield and more like a partnership? Let's find out. We've journeyed through the wild world of medieval arranged marriages where your spouse was picked based on their land portfolio, and modern dating apps where your match might hinge on whether they prefer dogs or tacos. We've seen how both systems, despite being centuries apart, wrestle with the same human messiness, finding someone you can build a life with or at least not run screaming from. Now let's tie it all together and figure out what these two eras teach us about love choice and the art of not screwing it all up. Plus, we'll reflect on how our ancestors' grit and our modern tech can inspire us to navigate relationships without losing our minds or our Wi-Fi. Let's recap the chaos. Back in the Middle Ages, marriage was a contract, not a rom-com. Your parents paired you with someone who could secure the family's future, whether that meant more sheep or a stronger alliance against rival clans. Love was a bonus, not the goal, and if your spouse turned out to be a dud, you were stuck unless you had a knack for accidentally misplacing them in a jousting mishap. Fast forward to today, and dating apps have flipped the script. You're the one in charge, swiping through profiles like you're picking a new phone case. But with all that freedom comes a new kind of pressure, endless choices, sky-high expectations, and the nagging feeling that the perfect match is just one more swipe away. Both systems, old and new, are trying to solve the same puzzle: how to pair people up without it all falling apart. What's wild is how these two worlds mirror each other. Medieval matchmakers, aka your meddling parents, and modern algorithms both think they know what's best for you. Back then it was marry this guy, he's got a castle. Now it's swipe right, he's 6'2" and likes hiking. Both can lead to awkward first meetings, whether it's a banquet where you're dodging your betrothed's questionable table manners, or a coffee date where you realize their great sense of humor is just recycled TikTok memes. And both eras show us that relationships aren't just about the spark, they're about what happens after the candles burn out. Our ancestors had to stick it out, building partnerships through sheer necessity. Today we've got the freedom to walk away, but that can make us quick to ditch a good thing just because it's not perfect. So what's the big lesson here? It's about balance. Medieval marriages remind us that relationships take work, communication, compromise, and sometimes just agreeing not to argue over who left the ox cart in the wrong spot. Those couples didn't expect their spouse to be their soulmate therapist and personal chef all at once, which took the pressure off. Dating apps, on the other hand, give us the gift of choice. You don't have to marry someone just because they own the village's only mill, but with that freedom comes responsibility to communicate clearly, to know what you value, and to not ghost someone just because they prefer pineapple on pizza. The sweet spot is combining the old school grit of "we'll figure this out" with the modern mindset of "I get to choose who I figure it out with." Let's get real for a second. Think about what we're chasing on these apps. We want someone who checks all our boxes, funny, kind, good with dogs, doesn't clap when the plane lands. But our ancestors didn't have boxes, they had basics. Can this person help me survive the winter? Can we keep the farm running? Their priorities were clear, and maybe that's something we can borrow. Instead of obsessing over whether someone's bio screams soulmate, maybe we focus on the big stuff. Do they respect you? Do they make you laugh? Can you talk to them without wanting to yeet your phone into the void? These are the things that turn a match arranged or swiped into something real. And here's where we can learn from both worlds: communication is everything. In medieval times, couples had to talk through their differences because splitting up wasn't an option. If your spouse was hogging the blanket, you didn't storm off to another village, you hashed it out. Today we've got the luxury of choice, but we're terrible at talking. We ghost, we overanalyze text, we assume seen means they hate us. What if we took a page from our ancestors and just said what we mean? Tell your date you're looking for something serious. Call out the bad behavior instead of unmatching. Be honest about what you want, whether it's a partner for life or just someone to split fries with. Clear communication doesn't just save relationships, it saves you from wasting time on the wrong ones. This all leads to a bigger question. Are we really that different from our medieval ancestors? They were stuck with matches made by their parents. We're stuck with matches made by code, but we're all just trying to find someone who makes life a little less lonely. Maybe the real secret isn't in the system arranged or app-based, but in how we show up. Valuing personal choice means knowing what you want and not settling for less. But it also means being willing to put in the work to talk through the awkward moments and to give someone a chance even if their first date outfit screams "I got dressed in the dark." Love then and now is less about finding perfection and more about building something real together. So what's the takeaway? Whether you're navigating a medieval marriage market or a modern dating app, relationships boil down to choice and effort. Choose someone who aligns with your values, not just your village's grain supply or your app's algorithm. And once you've chosen, put in the work. Talk, listen, laugh at their terrible jokes. That's how you turn a match into a partnership, whether it's sealed with a dowry or a double tap heart. What do you think? Would you rather let your parents pick your partner or trust an app to do it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's keep this conversation going. If you enjoyed this dive into love's past and present, give this video a like, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button for more stories that make you laugh and think. Want to explore more about how humans have fumbled their way through history? Check out our video on why our ancestors were tougher than us, or were they? Next. Thanks for watching, you absolute legends. See you in the next one.